Hello, everyone. Today, I'll be talking about clean code as part of this presentation. Hope everyone is having a good morning and a good day so far. Without much delay, let's get started. I have lots of questions and lots of interactions with you as part of this presentation. So, looking forward to your participations. So to begin with, I would like to thank Legacy Code Rocks for organizing the event, giving us the opportunity to meet. And personally, I have learned a lot with Legacy Code Rocks from their blogs, from their articles, and yeah, I have been hearing about it, learning a lot from these for quite some time now. Hope it has been similar journey for you guys too. So, in this presentation today, we will be talking about misleading code, why some developers write bad code, what is clean code, how clean code looks like, what are meaningful names, how to write your methods and functions, when to write comments, and then we'll be discussing a couple of principles like dry, CQS, and solid principles. So, that is what our presentation is going to be about. We will be talking a lot about the developer mindset as well to in order to write clean code. Many times we are like we know a lot of us know that okay, this is how the clean code should be written, this is how we should write our code, this is how we should structure our code, but even then we don't do it because of our mindset that we think that okay, it's perfectly fine, it's okay, it's what we care about, okay, as long as it's working, we should be fine. So here we are discussing about that mindset, that why do we have that type of mindset and how that actually hurts us sometimes, and we will be delving into that. So to begin with, I'll quickly introduce myself. About me, my name is Abhishek Jain. You can call me Abhi if my name is too long for you. um, I am a father and a husband. I'm a lead developer working at this company called Cornerstone On Demand for last 7.5 years now. I'm a regular presenter at meetups, code camps, various conferences, and platforms like these. Um, so other than my full-time job, I also do coaching. I coach software developers on how to crack technical interviews for companies, like, if you want to crack your interviews for Amazon, Google, Microsoft. So train you and go through all the like whiteboarding sessions where we will be going through problems like algorithm problems and data structure issues. So those are the type of questions that are asked to you. So I practice those with the developers. I also have a blog called it's on coach4dev.com, and I also have a YouTube channel with the same name. If you search for Coach for Dev, you will be able to see that. And please definitely if you send me a request on LinkedIn, here is my LinkedIn handle, linkedin.com/in/coach4dev, and I will definitely accept your request, and we can get connected and we can talk there. I usually start my presentations with a small brain teaser. Why do programmers take so long to shampoo? Anybody wants to take a stab at it? I'm not sure. I know you guys I cannot hear you guys, but you guys can put the response in the chat. It's gonna be a funny answer, just like an icebreaker for us. It's because the directions on the shampoo say lather, rinse, and repeat. So it's like an infinite loop. So it's a joke on the developers. All right. Yeah, if it was a little bit more interactive, we would have had shared a laugh together. All right. So, what gives hard time when we are debugging stuff, right? When you are, suppose you join a new company and there you are given a lot of code in front of you, and now you have to debug it. You are given a small defect or something to fix. Um, what is the biggest problem that we have? that gives us the hard time? In my opinion, the answer is difficult to understand code. Why is this structure here, right? You look at the code, these are the type of questions that you ask. You have some code that you look at, you have some variables, you have some methods, you have some classes, you have some um, big old code written, and you're trying to make sense of it, and it's really difficult um, to make sense of it, because it's difficult to understand code. So now, why do developers write bad code? I know it's a little bit of hard pill to swallow, especially for developers like us. But why do developers write bad code? And most likely the answer is that we tend to go too fast, right? We always have deadlines looming on our heads that okay, we need to finish this by the end of the day, right? Sometimes it's because of changing requirements. You start with some structure in your mind, and you start with like, okay, this is how I'm going to lay down the architecture. But then the product comes in and they change the requirements. If they change the requirements, then again this goes, whatever structure you had in your mind, that structure does not go exactly in place what you had thought of. So in that case, again, you have to change the requirements. So if they change the requirements, then you have to change the whole code, and then again it might not be as clean as you wanted it to be in the first place. Sometimes it's bad design, right? We don't know what code to put where, right? Like sometimes we don't know, or many developers don't know that okay, you should be having different layered architecture, and follow the process that this is all presenter code, or this is all the UI related code, so keep it here in a separate layer. This is all database access code, so keep it in a separate access layer. So those are the type of things which a lot of developers might not know. So that is the answer, like bad design basically. um, Similarly, poor developer skills, right? So who is responsible for bad code? Yes, and we already discussed this part of thing. But one thing we can that to begin with, like to start with, one thing that we can do is when somebody asks us for estimates, we need to give them proper estimates, right? That is our first step. That is our first thing that we should remember. Many times when somebody asks a developer like how much time will it take, the developer say, oh, it will take me only 5 minutes to finish this, it will take me only 10 minutes to finish this. That's not the right answer. That's not a good answer, right? You have to think through it that okay, when you are changing some, even a small piece of code, what consequences it can have, and how will you write your code, how will you test your code, how will you maybe put it in the right place. In order to do that, you might have to do a few more things, not just change one small thing and finish it off. You might have to, in order to make it a little bit better. So and when you say 5 minutes or 10 minutes, then you are setting expectation that okay, oh, you will be able to finish it real quick. And then when you start doing the work, you see that okay, yes, now you are just adding on top of bad code, you're just piling it up. Whereas you could have taken this chance to mend it, to make it better, to make it to improve the code. And we should not be afraid to mention that the change requirements will lead to more time, right? Many times the requirements keep on changing, and we are still made to adhere to our deadline. So when requirements are changed, we should not be afraid to uh, tell back that hey, the requirements have changed, now it's going to take a little bit more time. So that is perfectly fine, that is perfectly okay. And then yeah, defending the code quality is your responsibility as a developer, right? You have to you cannot just say that okay, this is how it was written, and you are just piling on top of it. You have to defend your code quality. Now suppose you are owning some legacy code at this point. Now you can start changing it better, making it better little by little, little by little. And then defending the code quality is your, it should be your responsibility. No, there is a theory called broken window theory. It's done by the psychologist called Philip Zimbardo. So what he did was he parked a car in a very good neighborhood, and he waited for a few days. and he was just watching the car. No one touched the car. The car was perfectly fine, and no one touched it. Okay. But then what he did is he broke a small part of the window. Okay. After a few days, he broke a small part of the window. And very soon, the tires, wheels, mats, everything were gone. Okay. So, what what does that tell us, right? If suppose if there is small thing that is broken, if something that is broken, people tend to think that okay, this is something that is in itself in a bad place right now. So they can think of that, okay, this is already a broken car, and then they will further break it, right? So this is something human psychology, and similar things happen to us too. When we see bad code, when developers see bad code, they say, oh, it doesn't matter for me if we do it wrong as well. So they just write bad code on top of more, and their defense is that hey, this was already too bad. I just wrote one extra line or two extra lines or one extra class. It's already a bad code. So after all, it's easier and faster. So that is the type of psychology that a lot of developers go with, and we can combat that. We can say that okay, no, we that is that leads to further bad code basically. So that there starts the BBM. BBM stands for, if you guys know, it's from I think the book Clean Code itself. It's called Big Ball of Mud. So why you should write clean code, right? We read more often than write the code, right? Each line, according to this estimate, each line is read at least 10 plus times, right? And being a professional, right? You are a professional. So imagine a doctor who doesn't wash hands. Will you ever see that doctor? I don't think so. So similarly, as a developer, right, it's your professionalism that hey, you write good code, you write code that is easier to understand, you write code that is easier to read. Um, Tech debt, you don't want to add more of tech debt. We already have a lot of it. Um, Hard to debug, right? We have already discussed that part. Sloppy code eventually takes more time. You might think that your first iteration might be quick and might be quick and dirty, and you are writing quick and dirty code. Your first iteration might be very quick, but eventually, towards like as you keep on adding more and more features, you keep on doing more and more work on that project. You will realize that if it actually takes much more time add together overall, if you were to write as compared to if you were to write clean code in the beginning from the beginning. And if you are known for clean code, you will have a better career, right? The word will definitely go with you, with your reputation. People will be like, okay, this guy, yes, we remember him. This guy is good at what he does. This guy writes really good code. This guy writes really clean code. So the that thing will remain with you. Um, that type of image will remain with you forever. So, Boy Scout rule: leave the campground cleaner than you found it. Right. So always try to do that. That whenever you see a lot of bad code, maybe you can't do everything in one shot, but make it a little bit better every time whenever you touch the code. Okay. Um, Also, one more thing that a lot of developers do is, like, suppose they are working on a feature or they are working on some project, and as soon as they start getting the code working, they're like, okay, yes, this is all done, and let me send it out, send that code out. So hold that mentality, hold that thought. Try not to send out your first draft. First draft, most of the time, first draft is not usually perfect. um, Whenever, for example, I'm writing some code and I'm trying to make it work, I am using I'm trying to make it quick, make it work quickly. I'm using variables like I or j or k or some things like that. I might get it working. Now it's there in my head that okay, I'm using this variable for this purpose, I'm using this variable for this purpose, and I'm using that variable for that purpose, and so on. But when I'm sending it out for code review or pull request, at that time I should be able to before that I should be able to change all that and make it a little bit more clean. I need to make sure that anybody who does my code review, who is reviewing my code, is able to understand the flow, is able to understand that, okay, I'm using this method for this purpose, I'm using this variable for this purpose. They should not be guessing that, okay, oh, this guy must be using this variable for that purpose. No, that should not be the case. Your code should be very easy to understand for the next person, so that they are able to quickly do your code review and tell you that, okay, oh, this is good and this is bad part. So, mindset for clean code, consider yourself as an author, right? You have to make your writing clear. You have to read your code aloud. Imagine if you have to read your code aloud, right? Something you can be proud of. Anyone should be able to understand easily, especially like think of it as a new joinee. Like if somebody, like you are writing a project and somebody joins your team in future, they should be able to understand your code much more much more easily. um, so yeah, that will help you write. If you have that type of mindset, that will help you write cleaner code. And if all else fails, imagine, so this is a warning for everyone. If all else fails, imagine the next person reading your code is a psychopath killer. All right. Okay. So I hope I convinced you guys on why you should write clean code so far, or at least you will like think about it and take that as a consideration. Next, what we're going to discuss is what exactly is clean code. Right. So far, we were discussing that why part on why you should write clean code. Next is and the mindset for that. So the next is like what exactly is clean code, and we will be discussing certain code strategies and coding examples we will take a look at, and that will help us understand that, okay, this is how we can improve the code or take it one step ahead. There are lots of good quotes on writing clean code, but we will look at only three of them so far right now. So the guy who invented C++. I'm not sure if I'm doing the right justice in pronouncing his name correctly, but I think it's Bjorn Strustrup. Um, um, uh, Sorry if I did not pronounce his name correctly, but these are exactly his words. I like my code to be elegant and efficient. The logic should be straightforward to make it hard for bugs to hide. The dependencies minimal to ease maintenance, uh, error handling complete according to an articulated strategy, and performance close to optimal so as not to tempt people to make the code messy with unprincipled optimizations. Clean code does one thing well. So he talks about that this is how to write clean code. Then there is another quote from Grady Booch. He's talking about clean code is simple and direct. Clean code reads like well written prose. Clean code never obscures the desirous intent, but rather is full of crisp abstractions and straightforward lines of control. And last but not the least, Michael Feathers, the person who wrote this book, Working Effectively with Legacy Code. I could list all of the qualities that I notice in clean code, but there is one overarching quality that leads to all of them. Clean code always looks like it was written by someone who cares. There is nothing obvious that you can do to make it better. All of those things were thought about by the code's author, and if you try to imagine improvements, you are led back to where you are, sitting in appreciation of the code someone left for you. Code left by someone who cares deeply about the craft. All right. So, um, in a nutshell, what is a clean code? Clean code is something that is very easy to follow, very easy to understand, right? By looking at the code, your code should be very easy to be able to make sense that, okay, this is how your classes are structured. This is how your methods are structured. This is how your variables and names are written. This is how how the flow is going through. This is how your you have, like, different patterns that you use, which are well known patterns. So if you use those, like, you make your code much more easy to understand for the next person who is reading your code. All right. So now let's go a little bit more concrete on writing clean code. There are two really good books. One is Clean Code by Robert C. Martin and Code Complete by Steve McConnell. So I will highly recommend these two books to you if you really want to check it out. So first and foremost strategy is meaningful names. This is the most important thing. So you should be using as more how do I say, more explanatory names so that it explains the intent of the usage um, in your code as much as possible. Now, with that said, it's okay to make it long. Like you might think that, okay, why should I name the variable as something like uh, number of managers with the approval permissions and all that stuff? That is too long of a name for a variable. But the it's okay to have long names. It's perfectly fine as long as you are telling the intent of that specific variable or method or classes, or anything, that any place that you're using your namings, you should be making it more revealing. You should be making it more explanatory so that it helps the people who understand, who are reading your code, that okay, this is what the intent of this thing is. um, Now, you should not need comments to explain it, right? If you are saying that, okay, oh, int I is equal to 0 and I is used for counter, I would say that's not a very good idea. Try to use the variable name as itself, like what's harming you, for what's stopping you from replacing that variable that you are using, like I, j, k, and a, b, c, or x1, x2, x3. Instead, if you use the actual names, that okay, this is what I'm using this for, this is what I'm using this for, I'm using this counter for the inner loop, I'm using this counter for the outer loop, or I'm using this variable for holding employee name. So make it as revealing, make it as explanatory as possible. um, Main things to remember is, like, yeah, your naming of variables, naming of classes, and methods. These are the main things that I would say that should reveal the intent as much as possible. So variable names, like for example, you want to get some employees, like which are not managers. Suppose this is something that you want, and you might be using your variable name as var l1 is equal to new list of employees which are not managers. So I have seen code exactly like this, where people are using some small variable name like ijk or abc, or something like that, and then they are trying to explain that with comment here, employees which are non-managers. So that is one thing that you don't have to do, you shouldn't have to do. Why is that? Sure, like, instead, why can't you just simply name the variable itself directly with that name? Why is that important? It's because many times what happens is, this is the variable that is being used here, and you put a comment here. Sure, the next person, so tomorrow your method is changing for some reason, and instead of get non-manager employees, it is using get non-manager employees with approver status, something like that. What they will do is, they will change the method definition, but nobody goes back and changes the comments, right? So with that, comments is something that other developers might ignore, and now you have an old hanging comment which is not even correct, and that comment is actually associated with this variable, which is not showing the correct intent anymore of that specific variable, and that makes your code hard to understand, that makes your code hard to debug. So to avoid that, right, what you can do is, you can just simply name the variable much more descriptively, and that way, even if first of all somebody is gonna come back and change it, They will see that, okay, you are using this variable for this purpose. And if they want to change something, there is a high probability that they will change the variable name, except rather than changing the comments. Next is like, so suppose you have a method to get trainings completed by a user, and I have seen many times, right, like that, okay, people will just write the method name as just simply get. The method name is again not telling you anything, just telling you the method name as get. What are you getting? What are you not getting? All that stuff. So make it as descriptive as possible, right? Get trainings completed by user. If you name the method like that, that will make it much more descriptive. Similarly, for class names too, same thing. Make it as so that it describes the purpose of the class. Try to be as specific as possible, and definitely do not use names like class one, class A, etc. Try to be as specific as possible. All right. Next is long methods. You must have seen that a lot of people have or you must have seen in code where methods are really long. Everybody, all of us have experienced those methods where you are spending a lot of time and energy to understand that, okay, what exactly is this whole method doing. I have seen like a method which was like about 200 lines long, and it took me about half a day just to understand that, okay, this is what this method is doing. And that method had been touched by at least 20 different developers over the time period. And the method name had was making no sense. It was such a long method, and it was very difficult to go line by line and to debug through that one step at a time to understand, okay, this is exactly what this code is doing. And yeah, so it was a lot of effort just to simply understand what the method is doing, right? So instead, uh, what what we should do is, like, we should break it up into smaller methods. So yeah, naming convention we have already talked about. The other is breaking up a small big method or long method into smaller methods. What that will do is that will actually help us make our method easier to understand. So suppose you have a large method, long method, and sure, you need to do a lot of things in that. But just to make it more readable, what you can do is you can take the snippets of code from your long method and put it into smaller methods, and which describe the intent of that small functionality. Like suppose you can abstract out 2 or 3 lines of code from that method and put them in a separate method, smaller method, which describes the intent of those 2 or 3 lines, and pass in whatever parameters it needs, and return whatever it is supposed to churn out, whatever it is supposed to return. That way you're making your large method and breaking it up into smaller methods, so that it's easier for the next person again to understand. Suppose you have a method like this, like uh, where you are getting the based on location, you are getting the universal board coordinates. So what this method is doing is it is replacing first of all the parentheses with the space. Then it is splitting by comma. Then it is checking whether it is valid or not by checking the length. And then it is doing a parse with the like doing an int parse. So it is going to convert basically the string to int, and then that's how it is computing the row and column, and then storing them here in these two variables, right? uh, just a small example for this thing. So what instead you can do is, like, make it a little bit more easy to understand for anyone, is like this one sample code. So here is that big method that here, int ordered pair parse string, and what it is doing is we are calling this method called parse string, which is taking in the parameter, and it is returning two of the like array of two integers. Then look at the parse string method. So parse string method in this, it is doing the replacement part of doing like the parentheses, and then it is doing the split on the comma, and then for the validity again it is calling a smaller method, which is all the validity code check. So that is all extracted into another method. If tomorrow if you have to add more validity checks in this, then you can add all those here itself in the check validity method. And then here parse coordinates is extracted out into a separate method, which clearly tells that, okay, what I'm doing is I'm first of all doing some replacing, some splitting, then I'm checking the validity, and then I'm parsing the coordinates. Sure, if you want to check the validity, yeah, go ahead and check what is the check validity method doing. You can go to that method and look at the content. But when I'm looking at this method, I don't have to go through each and every line that, okay, this is exactly what this line was doing, this is exactly what this line was doing, this is exactly what this line was doing. I'm just this makes the whole code much more readable as compared to the previous version. All right. Another rule of thumb, another principle to follow is avoid magic numbers, right? I'm sure you must have seen this code where you are using numbers like 7, 8, 9, 10, or 120, 130. I've seen myself too a lot of times, like, if input parameter equal to -7, then do this. And I have no clue why would somebody put -7, and what does a -7 represent, and why are you calling this method if somebody is inputting -7? No clue. But instead, if you are using a variable name for this number, then that actually tells me that, okay, this is what the intention was, right? Here password length is greater than 7, for example. In this case it's a little bit more easy to guess, but basically, um, like, if you have the opportunity, if you see the numbers like these, try to put them in a variable, right? So we have seen like timeout in seconds, for example, like if I want to say, or maximum number of attempts for password retries, all those things can be put in small variables and then used. That variable can be used throughout the whole code, as compared to just using 3 everywhere and 5 everywhere and 7 everywhere and so on. All right, next is comments. So this is a very controversial thingy, like whether we should write comments or not. Some people are very much pro comments, and some people are very much against comments, and some people are like, they don't care. It's a very controversial topic, and in my presentations I have seen that people have strong opinions about comments. um, and what the book Clean Code and what I have seen in my life so far, in my coding career, is that comments are usually not considered very good. Okay, they are good, they are okay to use in certain places, but in general we should try to avoid comments as much as possible. Why? First thing is, comments is something that we tend to use when we are writing bad code. Okay, when we are saying that, okay, I am not able to come up with a good variable name or a good method name, all I will try to do is I will just justify saying that, okay, put a comment like, okay, this variable is used for getting all the employees who are non-managers, something like that. um, I'm not able to think, I'm not able to take the time to think about a good variable name or a good method name, and instead I'm escaping that thing by just writing a comment. So it's not a good idea. That's why, like, I don't like comments personally. Now, in my opinion, like, if you have to write a comment in any situation, if there is a situation where you have to write a comment in the code, you should cringe at yourself. You should be like, oh my god, is there a way that I can somehow escape it? Is there a way that I can somehow avoid it, avoid writing the comment? So you should make every effort. And if then, like, you are not able to come up with something that, okay, this is something that only comment can explain, then only add a descriptive comment. But in general, most of the time, the comments can be avoided. your code itself should be able to explain that, okay, this is what this code is doing. So see if you can make the code self-explanatory, right? That is how your code should be. That is how descriptive your code should be. In order to make your code more descriptive, you might have to write longer variable names, longer method names, longer class names. Yes, that is possible. Um, uh, so try your best to avoid it. Hope that makes sense. All right. With methods, next is like another tip for the methods is you have different types of methods. The ones which take no arguments, ones which take one argument, two arguments, and three arguments. So how many arguments should be passed into a method, right? If you are taking in more than three arguments, then it's not a good idea. Okay, time to cringe at yourself again. Try to avoid. I have seen method like where there were like um, 10 variables or 10 parameters being passed into the method, and I was like, man, this is so hard to follow, so hard to read, so hard to understand, right? And these variables are somehow, some of them are somehow interconnected, some of them are not interconnected, and which does not make sense. Like, why is that? Like, why is it like this? um, it was basically a code smell where the method was trying to do too much, right? And secondly, like, it has been a long time since that code was getting piled up on one after another. So people were just simply adding more and more stuff to the same method. Nobody took the time to break it apart into smaller stuff. So yeah, so if you have more than three arguments, first is like, yeah, try to avoid that. See if you can change something about the method or split it into smaller ones. Split the functionality into smaller ones. Or if they are somehow interconnected, if everything is interconnected and you still need those, maybe it's time to use your DTOs. So DTOs are like small classes where you pass in all the variable names and club them together in a single class. All the class members are like, will hold the value which you need, and everything can be passed in as one single object instead of passing in 10 different variables. So yeah, DTOs are like they carries data between processes, methods, etc. It's like a simple object with only one single purpose to carry data, no business logic. Another one is flag arguments, and you and I, all of us, have seen this type of code where we have like I'll give you a small example of suppose you have a code which books some kind of tickets, or like a concert ticket, for example, and you have a booking method like a book method, in which you take in some parameter for customer. Okay, please book a ticket for this customer. And what this method does is it's simply booking the ticket for the customer and returns you the booking or the ticket. Now, as a developer, you are given the project that, okay, I want to add a new functionality for premium customers, so that somebody can book a premium ticket. A lot of people, what they will do is they will simply just take in the customer, and then they will add a boolean flag is premium, and then they will write the code like this: if it is a premium, then all the premium booking logic, and if it is otherwise, go through the regular booking logic, which is all the existing code. So um, we should try to avoid this type of behavior. We should try to avoid this type of code. Instead, what we should do is we should have two separate methods, right? Create separate methods. One is regular book and one is premium booking. And that way you are keeping all the business logic separate. Now, there might be certain shared code, yes, and you can put the shared code in a separate method and then call that shared method across these two methods, regular booking and premium booking. But try to avoid flag arguments, because this again is just simply adding complexity to your existing method and will make your code look not nice. All right, next is out parameter. So that is something again we should try to avoid, like out parameters. It is again a code smell. That means that so what is out parameter? Out parameter is something that people tend to use for returning multiple things from your method. You can return, sure, with the return statement, you can return one thing. But if you want to return more than one thing, you tend to use out parameter, wherein you take in the out parameter, pass it in, and then you put the value in that out parameter, and then you use that value in the calling method. Now, that means that you're most of the time when you're using out parameter, that means you're doing more than one thing in your method, which is again not a good principle. So try to avoid, preferably, right? If you can avoid it. If you have to return more than one thing, then what you can do is simply create a single, again, DTO kind of class, where you put in all the members, like whatever things you need to return, put them inside that class members, and then return those, instead of using, okay, I'm returning one thing here for using the return statement and other stuff using out parameter. That is again in general a code smell and should be avoided. Makes your code hard to read as well. So that is your first preference, like you should create a type instead, like that should be your first way. And the second preference, which I do not like personally, but that is again a recommendation, is you can use tuples. Tuples is something which is less used feature, where you can pass in two or like multiple things basically, in a single variable. So you can use like, I'll show you an example. Yeah, as you can see here, name this and age this. So that is also another example of using a tuple. But as you can see here, this is like, look at this, like this is not as good as using a single um, class or a single variable. All right. Again, if it was somebody who was interacting, I would have asked this question that, okay, here you have a method called validate. And this is what this doing is, it is checking if the username and password match. If yes, then initialize the session and return true, else return false. So what's wrong with this method? What is going on here in this method? Well, the answer is that, hey, uh, when you are checking that if the username and password match, what is the method name? Method name is validating, right? Username and password. So basically, the only responsibility for this method should be to validate whether the username and password match or not, right? What this method is doing, it is not only just validating, it is also initializing the session. So it is doing more than one thing. It is doing more than one what it is supposed to do. So that's something that should be avoided. Again, it makes your code very easy to become BBM, big ball of mud. People here, you are just doing one extra thing. People who are gonna be working on your code, they might keep on adding more things and more things and more things on top of it. If username and password match, then initialize session and initialize this and initialize that and do this and do that. So try to avoid as much as possible. You should have a separate method who is doing the initialize session and whatever is all the activities that need to happen. Maybe another method should be calling it that, okay, that method should call the validate, which is going to simply just check whether the username and password are valid or not, that combination is valid or not. If yes, then return true, otherwise return false. If it is true, then do the initialize session and all that stuff, all that ceremonies that need to be done. So that should be done by a separate method, and that should not be done by the validate method. All right. So yeah, same thing which I just mentioned, that it should not have any side effects. Validate user and initialize session, or yeah, or you can do it as a renaming the method by saying that validate user and initialize session. That will make your intent very clear, that okay, you are not only just validating the user, you are actually validating the user and initializing the session. All right. I have one more brain teaser. I wish it was more interactive, but why did the bank robber have a backslash before the dollar sign on the note? So when he was robbing the bank, he put a backslash before the dollar sign on the note. Why did you do that? The answer is so he could escape with the dollar. Backslash escape sequence. Hope you guys get it. All right. Next is command query separation, CQS principle. Actually, I don't have to go through it, but I'm almost out of time. So CQS principle, there are a lot of principles like this. I will I have put them in my slides. So feel free to go through them. I'm gonna put the link. I will talk to Scott about this on where we can put the links to the slides, and so that everybody can take a look and feel free to understand. And if you have any questions, definitely ping me on LinkedIn and or anything, and I will be happy to answer those questions. So yeah, error handling, then this thing, define exceptions for callers needs, avoid returning nulls, um, commented out code, which is again something I'm not a big fan of. Um, so yeah, another thing to remember is slow and steady. Each team and each company runs at its own pace, so the level of cleanliness depends on the team itself, and it evolves with time. I'll give you a quick example. When I joined my team here, where I'm currently working, um, the I saw that what they were doing is they used to write comment for every line of code, and that was the norm. Everybody used to do that in the whole team. They were like, this is a variable for this, this is a method for this is here is the for loop, here is the here I am calling this method, here I'm doing this, here I'm doing this. They used to write code for a comment for every line of code, and I was like, man, what is this? Why are they doing it? So this is not good overall. So I joined the time. When I joined the team, I was like, okay, this is really not fruitful. This is not really worth my time. So what I did as of today, what happened is, like, right now, nobody writes any comments. Um, what we and how did we make that happen? How did we make that happen? It took us about a couple of years to reach that level, and the way we proceeded, the way we did was we gave each other honest code reviews. So I used to add that comment in the code reviews that, hey, please don't do this, right? Then used to spend time on code reviews. We treat each other with respect. Nowhere we were using a bad language or something like, oh, you don't know how to write this code or something like that. No, you have to be polite, you have to be very patient, because here you are eventually working with people, right? Yeah. And then where what we did is we started doing some learning sessions within our team. That actually was the turning point, where we used to teach each other that, okay, this is what we know, this is what we learned, this is how to write clean code, this is how to write different types of design patterns, this is how to have better maintainable code. So when we did that, we started blocking time in our sprint, saying that, okay, we will have spend 1 hour every week or every other week, um, that, okay, we will be discussing about clean code, and we will be rotating the presenter amongst ourselves. That was actually the biggest turning point for our team, where we all learned best practices of coding, and taught each other, and made all of us aware that, okay, this is how we should do it. So yeah, that actually helped us a lot, and I would recommend, like, this is one of the best ways to go about it. um, all right, so better naming everywhere, that is the biggest takeaway that I can give you. Follow principles, which we have discussed, so many of them, and always imagine your method as if you're telling a story, and it should be like the flow itself should make complete sense. If somebody reads the method names, the class name, the variable names, they should be able to understand the whole workflow. So yeah, keep that in mind, and that mindset is something that will help you write a clean code always. And at the end, yeah, thank you everyone for listening and for joining the presentation, and for giving me the opportunity to talk about clean code today. And yeah, if you are interested in learning on how to crack interviews and technical coaching, if you are or any other technical topics, feel free to reach out to me. Here is my LinkedIn handle, and this is my website, Coach for Dev. Thank you everyone.
All right. Thanks a bunch, Abhishek.